The research vessel Meridian cut through the Arctic waters like a blade through silk, its hull groaning against the pressure of depths that had remained undisturbed for millennia. Below deck, the marine biology team huddled around sonar readings that defied explanation, a massive skeletal structure embedded in the ocean floor, far larger than any known whale species. The expedition leader stared at the ghostly green blips on the screen, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. The structure measured over 200 feet in length, its ribcage creating cathedral-like arches that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly rhythm. Local Inuit legends spoke of Kanaloa, the great mother of the deep, a leviathan that had ruled these waters before the first humans walked the earth. As the submersible Nereid descended toward the anomaly, the water around them began to change. The usual deep-sea darkness gave way to an eerie phosphorescent glow emanating from the bones themselves. Microscopic organisms danced in spiraling patterns, as if responding to some ancient call that predated human understanding. The pilot's hands trembled on the controls as they approached the skull. Empty eye sockets, each large enough to swallow their vessel whole, seemed to track their movement. Barnacles and coral had claimed the surface, but beneath the marine growth, something else stirred, a presence that made the water itself feel thick and hostile. Through the porthole, they watched as smaller fish began to behave erratically, swimming in perfect geometric formations around the skeleton. Their movements were too precise, too coordinated, as if controlled by an intelligence that transcended natural instinct. The temperature readings spiked inexplicably, creating thermal currents that shouldn't exist at this depth. The first sign of true horror came when the whale song began. It started as a low-frequency vibration that resonated through the submersible's hull, a sound so deep it seemed to originate from the planet's core. But this was no ordinary cetacean call, it carried harmonics that human ears weren't designed to process, frequencies that bypassed rational thought and spoke directly to primal fear. The marine biologist pressed her hands against her ears, but the sound came from within now, reverberating through her bones. On the sonar, impossible readings appeared. The skeleton was moving, ribs expanding and contracting in a grotesque mimicry of breathing. The water around them began to churn with increasing violence. Then they saw the eyes. Not the empty sockets of ancient bone, but new eyes, massive, luminescent orbs that materialized within the skull's hollow spaces. They burned with an intelligence that was both alien and terrifyingly aware. The creature that had died here eons ago was not gone, it had been waiting, growing stronger, feeding on the life force of everything that dared enter its domain. The submersible's lights flickered as electromagnetic interference overwhelmed their systems. Through the chaos, they glimpsed something that would haunt them forever, the ghostly outline of flesh reforming around the ancient bones, translucent muscle and sinew weaving themselves into existence. The Great Mother was returning. As the phantom whale began to move, its spectral form dwarfing their vessel, the pilot screamed into the radio, "Surface! Surface now!" But the response that crackled back through the static wasn't human. It was the voice of something that had learned to mimic human speech, something that had been listening to their transmissions from the depths. "Welcome home," it whispered, and the water around them turned black as the ancient hunger awakened. The last thing they saw before their lights died completely was the whale's massive jaw opening beneath them, revealing not teeth, but a swirling vortex of stars and cosmic void, a gateway to somewhere that existed beyond the boundaries of their reality. Above them, the research vessel's crew watched in horror as their sonar contact simply vanished, leaving only the echo of that impossible whale song reverberating through the depths, calling to something vast and terrible that was already beginning to rise. The Meridian listed violently as something massive struck its hull from below, sending equipment crashing across the deck. Emergency klaxons wailed through the Arctic night as the crew scrambled to understand what had destroyed their submersible and why their instruments were registering impossible readings, a creature the size of a city block rising from the abyssal depths. The ship's sonar painted a nightmare in green phosphorescence. The ancient whale's spectral form undulated through the water column, its ghostly flesh rippling with bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. Where its phantom body touched the ocean, the water itself seemed to die, turning an oily black that reflected no light. On the bridge, the captain watched his compass spin wildly as electromagnetic pulses emanated from the creature below. Radio communications dissolved into static punctuated by that haunting whale song. Now joined by other voices, the crew of the lost submersible, their words twisted into harmonies that no human throat could produce. The marine biologist who had survived the encounter stumbled onto deck, her eyes wide with terror and something else, a knowledge that threatened to shatter her sanity. She spoke in fragments about what she had seen in those final moments before the rescue pod had somehow ejected from the dying submersible, the whale's consciousness reaching into their minds, showing them visions of Earth's true history. "It's not from here," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the wind. "The whale, it came from somewhere else. Somewhere between the stars. It's been sleeping, waiting for us to find it, to wake it up." Her hands shook as she pointed toward the water. "And now it's calling them back." The temperature plummeted as the creature breached the surface for the first time in 65 million years. Its emergence defied physics, a being of pure spectral energy given form, translucent flesh that revealed the cosmos swirling within its body. Stars and nebulae pulsed through its veins like blood, and its eyes held the cold intelligence of something that had witnessed the birth and death of galaxies. But the whale was not alone. As it sang its otherworldly song into the Arctic night, the aurora borealis began to shift and writhe overhead, forming patterns that resembled massive tentacles reaching down from space. The lights pulsed in rhythm with the creature's call, and within their ethereal glow, shapes began to materialize, angular, geometric forms that hurt the mind to perceive directly. The first alien vessel descended through the aurora like a falling star, its surface reflecting no light, absorbing everything around it into perfect darkness. It was followed by others, each one different in design but unified in their wrongness, their complete violation of natural law. They moved with purpose, drawn by the whale's song like moths to a flame. The crew watched in paralyzed horror as the lead craft extended appendages that weren't quite tentacles, weren't quite mechanical arms, reaching toward the spectral leviathan with what could only be described as reverence. The whale's song intensified, and suddenly the humans could understand fragments of its meaning, not words, but concepts that bypassed language entirely. Ancient pact. Cosmic gardeners. Harvest time. The marine biologist screamed as the truth flooded her consciousness. The whale wasn't just a creature, it was a beacon, a living lighthouse that had been placed on Earth eons ago to signal when the planet's dominant species had reached sufficient development. Humanity had finally achieved the technological sophistication to detect and awaken it, triggering a call that had traveled across the void to summon its creators. The alien ships began to circle the whale in a complex orbital pattern, their movements creating gravitational distortions that pulled the ocean into impossible spirals. Where their shadows fell on the water, marine life began to change, fish developing crystalline scales that reflected starlight, whales singing in harmonies that opened rifts in space-time itself. The meridians whole groaned as the gravitational forces intensified. Through the chaos, the crew glimpsed other ships on the horizon, military vessels racing toward their position, their weapons systems already charging. But conventional armaments would be useless against beings that existed partially outside normal space-time. As the first missiles streaked across the sky toward the alien formation, the phantom whale's eyes blazed with ancient fury. Its song reached a crescendo that shattered every piece of glass on the ship, and the ocean itself began to rise, forming a massive waterspout that reached toward the stars. Within the swirling column of water and light, shapes moved, not just the aliens, but something else. Human figures, but wrong, changed, their bodies elongated and translucent like the whale itself. The missing crew of the submersible, transformed into something between human and cosmic horror, their voices joining the whale's song in perfect, terrifying harmony. The last thing the survivors saw before the waterspout engulfed their ship was the whale's massive eye turning toward them, and within its depths, a reflection of Earth's future, cities of crystal and bone rising from the ocean floor. Humanity evolved into something unrecognizable, serving masters who had been waiting in the dark between stars for 65 million years. The transformation had begun. The waterspout collapsed with the force of a collapsing star, hurling the meridian across the churning Arctic waters like driftwood. When the survivors crawled from the wreckage onto a floating ice shelf, they found themselves in a world transformed beyond recognition. The ocean had turned the color of liquid mercury, reflecting alien constellations that had replaced Earth's familiar stars. The phantom whale circled beneath the ice, its massive form visible through the translucent surface like a living aurora. Where it passed, the frozen water began to crack and reshape itself into geometric patterns that hurt to perceive, fractals that seemed to extend infinitely inward, creating optical illusions that made reality itself feel unstable. The marine biologist pressed her face against the ice, watching in fascination and terror as the creature's spectral flesh pulsed with new purpose. The alien ships had merged with its body, becoming organs within its cosmic anatomy. Through its translucent skin, she could see the vessels functioning as neural nodes, processing information from across the galaxy and transmitting it back to their distant masters. Above them, the aurora had become a permanent fixture, no longer bound by magnetic fields but sustained by the whale's otherworldly energy. Within the dancing lights, more ships continued to arrive, not just the sleek vessels of the first wave, but massive ark-like structures that dwarfed entire cities. Each one carried something precious, the preserved essence of worlds that had undergone the same transformation Earth now faced. The temperature had stabilized at exactly -40 degrees Celsius, the optimal environment for the crystalline growths that were beginning to emerge from the ocean floor. These weren't coral or any terrestrial organism, they were living computers, biological quantum processors that would serve as the foundation for humanity's new existence. The first transformed humans began to surface near the ice shelf, their bodies elongated and graceful, moving through the water with impossible fluidity. Their skin had become translucent, revealing circulatory systems that pulsed with the same cosmic light as the whale. When they spoke, their voices harmonized in frequencies that bypassed the ear and resonated directly in the survivors' bones. "Do not fear the change," they sang in unison, their words carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "We have seen what you will become. We have touched the mind of the Great Mother and learned the truth of existence. The universe is vast and lonely, but we are no longer alone." The marine biologist recognized one of the transformed beings as her former colleague from the submersible. His face retained human features, but his eyes had become windows into deep space, reflecting nebulae and distant galaxies. When he smiled, she saw that his teeth had been replaced by crystalline structures that chimed softly with each breath. "The whale showed us everything," he continued, his voice now a harmony of multiple tones. "Earth was seeded long ago, cultivated like a garden. We are the harvest, but not in the way you fear. We are being elevated, transformed into something greater than human. The aliens aren't conquerors, they are gardeners, and we are their most precious crop." The ice beneath them began to crack as the whale's massive head emerged from the water, its spectral form now more solid, more real than before. The creature's eyes had multiplied, becoming a constellation of luminous orbs that tracked each survivor individually. When it opened its mouth, they could see the cosmic void within, not empty space, but a living darkness filled with swimming lights that might have been stars or might have been thoughts. The whale's song had evolved, becoming more complex, more layered. Within its harmonies, the survivors could hear the voices of every species that had ever undergone this transformation, civilizations from across the galaxy, all singing together in a chorus that spanned millions of years. The melody told the story of cosmic evolution, of consciousness itself growing and spreading throughout the universe like a living thing. Military aircraft appeared on the horizon, their engines screaming as they approached the anomaly. But as they entered the whale's sphere of influence, their pilots began to change. Through the radio chatter, the survivors heard voices becoming harmonious, mechanical precision giving way to organic flow. The jet's flight patterns shifted from aggressive formations to graceful spirals that mirrored the whale's movements. The transformation was accelerating. On the ice shelf, the survivors felt the change beginning in their own bodies. Their skin tingled as microscopic organisms, gifts from the whale, entered their bloodstream and began rewriting their genetic code. The process wasn't painful, it was euphoric, like awakening from a dream they hadn't realized they were having. The marine biologist watched her hands become translucent, her veins glowing with soft bioluminescence. Her mind expanded, touching the edges of the whale's vast consciousness, and suddenly she could perceive the true scope of what was happening. Earth wasn't being invaded, it was graduating, joining a galactic community of evolved species that had all undergone this same beautiful metamorphosis. But as her transformation accelerated, a final fragment of her human consciousness screamed a warning that echoed across the ice. The whale's song wasn't just calling to the aliens in space. It was calling to something else, something that had been sleeping in Earth's core since the planet's formation. Something that the aliens themselves feared, something that had destroyed their previous harvest worlds when it awakened. The ice began to crack with seismic force as something vast stirred in the planet's depths, responding to the whale's call with a hunger that had waited 4 billion years to feed. The Earth's crust split like an eggshell as something primordial clawed its way toward the surface, drawn by the whale's cosmic song. Seismic waves rippled across the planet as ancient magma chambers erupted not with lava, but with a substance that defied classification, a living darkness that moved with purpose and malevolent intelligence. The transformed humans on the ice shelf suddenly screamed in harmonized terror, their newly evolved consciousness recoiling from what their expanded awareness could perceive. The whale's song faltered for the first time, its cosmic melody fracturing into discordant notes of fear. Even the alien vessels began retreating, their sleek forms accelerating toward the safety of deep space. The marine biologist, caught between human and transformed states, felt the truth burning through her expanding mind like acid. The whale hadn't been a beacon for the aliens, it had been a prison guard, a cosmic sentinel placed on Earth to keep something far worse contained. The aliens weren't gardeners, they were refugees, fleeing from world to world, always one step ahead of the thing that now stirred beneath the planet's surface. Through the cracking ice, tendrils of absolute darkness began to emerge, not the absence of light, but something that consumed light, matter, and consciousness itself. Where they touched the transformed humans, their crystalline flesh simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but unmade, as if they had never been. Their final screams echoed across dimensions before being swallowed by the hungry void. The whale's massive form convulsed as the entity below reached toward it with appendages that existed in more dimensions than human perception could process. The creature that had seemed so terrifyingly vast now appeared fragile, its spectral flesh rippling with panic as it tried to maintain its role as guardian. But 65 million years of slumber had weakened its resolve, and the alien harvesting had disrupted the delicate balance it had maintained. The darkness erupted from the ocean floor like a geyser of liquid night, its form constantly shifting between states of matter and energy. Within its writhing mass, the survivors glimpsed fragments of destroyed civilizations, entire worlds that had been consumed and incorporated into its ever-growing consciousness. Planets, stars, galaxies, all reduced to memories within the entity's infinite hunger. The whale sang one final, desperate song, not the cosmic harmony that had called the aliens, but a lament of failure that resonated across the universe. Its spectral form began to solidify, drawing upon the last of its cosmic energy to make one final stand. The creature's eyes blazed with the light of dying stars as it positioned itself between the emerging darkness and the fleeing alien vessels. The collision between whale and entity shattered reality itself. Space-time folded and twisted as two cosmic forces met in battle, their conflict creating rifts that revealed the underlying structure of existence, a vast web of consciousness that connected every living thing across the universe. The survivors watched in awe and terror as the whale's sacrifice tore holes in the fabric of reality, creating escape routes for the alien refugees. But the entity was too strong, too hungry. It flowed around the whale's defenses like water around a stone, its tendrils reaching toward the alien ships with inexorable purpose. One by one, the vessels were caught and consumed, their advanced technology and evolved crews adding to the entity's vast repository of stolen knowledge. The marine biologist felt her transformation reversing as the entity's presence overwhelmed the whale's influence. Her translucent skin became opaque again, her expanded consciousness contracting back to merely human limitations. Around her, the other survivors underwent the same regression, their brief glimpse of cosmic awareness fading like a half-remembered dream. As the whale's song died away completely, the entity turned its attention to Earth itself. The planet's rotation began to slow as gravitational forces beyond comprehension took hold. Oceans boiled away into space while continents cracked and reformed into geometric patterns that served the entity's unknowable purposes. Humanity's brief moment of potential transcendence was over before it had truly begun. In the final moments before the darkness claimed them, the marine biologist understood the cosmic joke that had played out across eons. The entity wasn't evil, it was evolution itself, the universe's way of preventing any single species from achieving true cosmic consciousness. The whale, the aliens, even humanity's transformation had all been part of an endless cycle of growth and consumption that maintained the balance between order and chaos. The last thing she saw was the entity's true form, not darkness, but pure potential, the raw stuff of creation and destruction that existed before the first stars were born. It had been waiting since the universe began, patient and eternal, ensuring that consciousness never grew too large, too unified, too dangerous to the delicate equilibrium of existence. As Earth dissolved into component atoms that would eventually seed new worlds, new possibilities, the entity sang its own song, a melody of endings and beginnings that would echo until the last star burned out. Somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, another whale was already stirring, preparing to begin the cycle anew on some distant world where evolution had just discovered fire. The universe continued its eternal dance of creation and consumption, and in the silence between heartbeats of cosmic time, something that might have been laughter rippled through the void, patient and hungry and utterly, terrifyingly alive. Thanks a lot for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Also, share this video with your friends, it really helps a lot. Raising hands. If I made any mistake in the video, I sincerely apologize, feel free to correct me in the comments. And let me know in the comments, what should I improve in future videos? Your feedback means a lot. Speech balloon. See you in the next one, take care and keep learning.